Are you able to see the screen? Can you see the screen? Okay. Okay, recording has started. So let's start. So in the last class, we were considering the like we started the discussion on linear classifier. So like linear classifier, obviously, as the name suggests, is such a it is basically a linear structure which divides the whole space into the whole feature space into two house spaces, such that on one side of the house space, the one class level is assigned, or one class level is predicted. On the other side, or on the other house space, the other class level is predicted. So this is basically how a linear classifier works. That is sign of W transpose X, where W is the linear structure and X is the feature vector, and Y, the class level, obviously can take only two values, either +1 or -1. So now the question arises that like is this kind of a linear classifier, is it good enough to classify a particular data set? So we saw that there can, if the data set satisfies a particular property, then we say then a linear classifier will be able to classify it correctly. What's the name of that property? What kind of a data set can be perfectly classified by a linear classifier?
So linearly separable data.
Right, linearly separable data. So if the data set is linearly separable, which means that there exists a linear structure which separates the data points of the two different classes, then we say that such a data set is linearly separable. Like for example, this kind of a data set. Right, this kind of data set, as you can see quite clearly, is going to be linearly separable. Now the question is, how do I find a like a linear classifier which will be able to separate the two classes in the data set? So if I am interested in finding any single linear classifier that will separate the two classes, I can go for perceptron algorithm. It will give me some line. It may be this line, it may be this line, it may be the vertical line, anything. Now the question is, if instead of asking for any linear structure to separate the classes, suppose I say that I want the best linear structure to, or the best hyperplane classifier to separate the two classes. So then the question would arise, of course, that what is best in this case? And for that, we, in the last class, we defined a concept called margin. So we saw that like for any particular classifier, like we, first of all, we can have marginal classifiers like this. This is like a marginal classifier for the cross class, and this is the marginal classifier for the circle class, right? So, and like these two we have drawn parallel to each other. So like the margin of this with respect to the cross class is 0, the margin of this with respect to the circle class is 0. Now suppose I, like in between them but parallel to them, suppose I draw like a hyperplane classifier like this. So this has equal margin from both the classes, right? So this margin whatever is the amount of that, or magnitude of that margin, let's say m. So basically the total margin of that of the data set with respect to this particular classifier is given by 2m, right? Now what did we want to do? We want now we decided that it is in our best interest to choose such a hyperplane classifier for which this margin is as large as possible. Like in this case, the now the margin will vary from one classifier to another. In if we are going for this one, the margin is 2m. If instead of that, if we had gone for the vertical one, then the margin would have been somewhat different. Whatever it is, I want the margin to be as large as possible, and that is why what I decided to do was maximum margin classification, right? So for this purpose, what did we do? We we formulated a problem. So that is, first of all, we noted that the margin is basically equal to 1 by L2 norm of W. Where now what is W? So first of all, we have to scale the data such that this is like y equal to W transpose X plus 1, and this one is equal to y equal to W transpose sorry, not like that. Yeah, so such that the equation of this one is equal to W transpose X equal to -1, and this one is equal to W transpose X equal to +1, and in between the two of them there lies W transpose X is equal to 0. Okay. So now so in such a situation we saw that the margin is given by 1 by the L2 norm of W. So this is the margin which I have to maximize. Now maximizing this obviously means minimizing its reciprocal. So what did I? So I formulated an optimization an optimization problem in the following way. So I guess 2 was there. Yeah. So half of W2. So if I want to maximize this, I will have to minimize this. But instead of minimizing this, I am minimizing the square of it. Right? Now this is the, like you can say that this is the structural property which I want to achieve. Structure. So this objective function I can call as my structural risk. Just like I did the same thing in case of L2 like a ridge regression also. But apart from that, I also want and have constraints. What's the constraint? The constraint is that I want all the points to be correctly classified. Now what does that mean? That means every point, like the predicted level of every point which is given by this thing should match its true level which is given by yi. That is, the true level of any point I is yi. Its predicted level is sine of W transpose xi. Now that is so this is also like we have assumed that both of them are +1 or -1, right? So then what is the simple criteria for checking whether these two are matching or not? That is that we saw is yi times W transpose xi, right? So yi times W transpose xi, if this is positive, that means what? That means like either both of them are positive, that is both of them are sorry, like either this is positive and this is +1, or this is negative and this is -1. If this is positive and this is this is +1 and this is negative, then this product would be negative. Similarly, if this is negative and this is -1 and this product is this part is positive, then also their product will be negative. So for correct classification, this part must be positive. But in this case, we are not satisfied only in making it positive. We wanted, I mean, positive, sorry, in this case, so if this is positive, this basically means correct classification. So just a second. So this condition means correct classification with respect to what? I mean, correct classification by which classifier? Correct classification by the classifier W sine of W transpose X.
Yeah.
Yes. So like if this is positive or not, like if this is greater than equal to 0, then basically means this particular classifier is is classifying the point correctly, right? But I want something more. what more do I want? I want the marginal classifiers also to classify this thing correctly. That is all the, it is if this happens, that means what? That means all the -1 points lie on this side of of this dashed line, and all the plus points lie on this sides of the dashed line. But in this case, since I want margin maximization, what I also want is that it is not enough for points to be on this side of, like minus points to be on this side of the dashed line. I want the all minus points to be on this side of this line, which is the marginal classifier. Similarly, I also want all the plus 1 points to be on this side of the corresponding marginal classifier. So for that, and what are the marginal classifiers? One is this, the other is that. So it turns out that for correct classification by marginal classifiers, what I want is this, instead of having 0, we have to have 1 here. That is the SVM formulation, right? And this is like this constant we have to repeat for all the data points from 1 to n. Now so now what do we do? Now like if you remember, we set up this as a constraint optimization problem. We define what is known as the augmented loss function or augmented objective function in the following way. So if there are n constraints, we add all of those n constraints into the augmented objective function along with a Lagrange multiplier. Let's call that as alpha I. Yesterday I was calling as lambda I, but for consistency with the slides, let me call them as alpha I. So here, and now let us change each of the constraints to the normal form, which and the normal form, as we saw yesterday, is like this. This is the normal form. So let us bring it like that. So this is basically W transpose Xi, correct? Now what do? So basically now I know Y, I know X, I do not know alpha, and I do not know W. So basically this is a function of W and alpha. Okay. So now what do we do? First of all, I take the derivative of this loss function with respect to W and I equate it to 0. That gives me this result. W equal to summation alpha I yi xi, where I is from 1 to capital N. Then what happens? Then so then I substitute W here in this equation, and then I get like the loss function basically becomes only a function of alpha. So then I run what is known as quadratic programming, and I get the alphas. Okay. I get the values of all the alphas, which I simply plug in here, and then I am able to estimate what is the value of W. Okay. So this is the way I get W. Now it turns out that for most of the alphas are equal to 0 for most I. Okay, and alpha I is non-zero for which points here? Now for those points which lie on the marginal classifiers, like this one, in this case this one and this one. So it's like these points. So what do we call these points which lie, for which alpha is non-zero? Remember, what name did we give to these data points?
Support vector.
These are the support vectors. These are the support vectors. Why are they called support vectors? Because these vector, because of course these are feature vectors. These are points on the vector space, and they are called support vectors because basically they are supporting this line. This one is supporting the the marginal classifier, and this one is supporting this marginal classifier. So these points, it's like these points which are critical, that is their correct classification determines whether our classifier is doing well or not. The other points which are further apart, they are anyway easy to classify, they are not critical. It's really these which are the critical ones, and so the W actually depends on these points, not on the other points. Okay. Now, let us consider the case, a more realistic scenario where the dataset which we are dealing with has a small number of outliers. Now, what happens in case of outliers? So, or what do we mean by outliers? That means, once again, let's consider the same binary dataset like this. But there is a cross line here and there is a circle line here. Let's say there is another circle line here also. So as you can now understand, this data set is almost linearly separable. What do I mean by almost linearly separable? It means that there does not exist any linear structure which can perfectly separate the two classes. It cannot happen, or it is not possible to find any linear structure such that all the crosses are on one side and all the circles are on the other side. That cannot happen. But what can happen is that, except for the outliers, we can classify all the other points correctly, right? So the problem here, so here we know which are the outliers, we can actually visualize and identify which are the outliers. So if we want, in this case, we can just manually prune out all the outliers. That is, we can say, okay, you are an outlier, go away, you are an outlier, go away, you are an outlier, go away. We can identify them, drop them, and use the remaining non-outliers or the remaining good points to run the SVM algorithm. The problem here is that as soon as we go into higher dimensions and there are a larger number of a larger number of data points to deal with, then we will not be able to so easily understand which points are outliers. Okay? So in such a situation, what is necessary is that we must have provisions to make sure that any point can be considered, like can be an outlier, and we make some provisions accordingly. Now, in the present, so what is the problem with the SVM formulation which we had earlier? If we in the presence of earlier, I'm sorry, in the presence of outliers. So our aim, note that our aim still remains the same. We still want to find the maximum margin. Now, the definition of margin again will be strained because of the introduction of the outliers. But again, we define the margin as follows: that except for that is to say, we make exceptions for the outliers when we are defining the margins. So now, given that on this data set also we are trying to maximize the margin, or trying to find such a linear classifier with which will have maximum margin except for the outliers. So we continue with the same basic structure of the problem as follows. That is to say, I want to minimize half of this quantity, the squared L2 norm, such that right, for all I. The problem is that the problem is that since we have assumed that, or since we know that this data set contains outliers, so those points are outliers, means what? They are, that means it's not possible for any linear classifier W to classify them correctly. So if we consider, so whatever W we are considering, this will not be satisfied for the outlier points. For the non-outlier points, yes, they may be satisfied, but for the outlier points, they will not be satisfied, right? But here again is a problem. The problem is that we do not know which points are outliers and which points are not. I mean, like it all depends on perspectives. Like say, if we are considering this kind of a classifier, then maybe this circle and this circle, this circle, this cross, they are the outliers, right? But on the other hand, if we consider like say maybe this kind of a thing, or yes, some maybe something like this. In that case, this point becomes an outlier. This maybe this this point becomes an outlier. This point becomes outlier. This point becomes outlier, and so on. That is to say, for different values of W, we will end up misclassifying a different set of points. So we cannot really say which, like we cannot unanimously say that this point is always the outlier or that point is always the outlier. That will, for some of the points maybe that also we can say, but in general for most of the points we will not be able to say that. So that means what? So to handle such situations, we have to make provision to make sure that any of the n points can be an outlier if necessary, and this equation will still be satisfied. So what do? We basically allow this like what is called a slack variable with each point. Now this symbol is called the xi. Okay. This is the xi. So what is like so this is called a slack variable. Now, why do I need the slack variable? Now, this point, like this slack variable basically ensures that this equation, this constraint remains satisfied for all points, whether it is an outlier or not. Okay, ensures constraint satisfied for all points, right? Now what about the, like, what value this xi takes? Now xi does not take any value like that. It depends on like I mean the values of xi are not fixed. It's like for a particular value of w, as w changes, the xi's will also change. But the thing is that the xi's will basically make sure that the xi's will change in such a way as to make sure that this equation holds. This is not violated. So if you consider this point, right, for like if so as we understand, whatever w we choose, probably the or like okay, for example, let us say we are choosing this w, whatever, like this is w transpose x equal to 0. Let us say that this is the optimal hyperplane classifier that we are considering. Now and in that case, of course, there are the marginal classifiers. This is one marginal classifier. Let us say there is another marginal classifier like this. Now what is happening now, like if you look at this particular point, so as you can see that this lies on the correct side of both the optimal classifier as well as to the respective marginal classifier, right? So this, there is no problem in classifying this particular point or in classifying this particular point. Okay, so that means what? That means if you look at this point, definitely this property holds. Right, it means what? This property means what? This property means it is correctly classified by the respective marginal classifier, and if it is classified by correctly by the marginal classifier, then obviously it will have to be correctly classified by the optimal classifier also, right? So in this case, so in this like for this particular point, I do not even need xi, so I can safely say that 1 minus xi. So here I can just put the value of xi to be equal to 0. Okay. I do not need xi. This, like even in the older formulation also, my the constraints which I had in the previous formulation, they will still be satisfied. So I say xi is equal to 0. Similarly, for this point also, I say xi is equal to 0. This point also xi equal to 0. Here also xi equal to 0. Even here even here I can say xi is equal to 0. Okay. The problem arises with this point, this cross, right? So this is as you can understand is misclassified. Now it is misclassified means what? This point x is misclassified means its y is equal to -1, but its w transpose x is positive. Okay, so so there is a mismatch between them. So if I take the product of these two things, like I will get a negative quantity. So obviously this like the previous formula constant is going to be violated. Okay, so clearly for a point like this product is a negative value. Let us say that -5. I mean, -5 is just a value which I am saying. It can be anything else also. Let us say this is -5. So now, so -5. So now the previous equation, the what we are considering earlier, that equation basically becomes like -5 greater than equal to 1, which is obviously wrong. So what I have to do? I will now the xi I comes into picture. So I will have to pick up such a value of xi I such that this becomes correct. So what value of xi I take? Let's say suppose I take the value xi I is equal to 6. Okay, so now it's satisfied. Similarly, for same thing can be said about this circle, or maybe like this circle also, right? So here for this point, what happens is the opposite. Here y is equal to 1, but w transpose x is negative. So this product in this case is some other value. Let us say in this case it is -12. So what we like the previous formulation is saying -12 greater than equal to 1, which is obviously wrong. So what we have to do now, over here for this point again the xi I comes into picture. So here I put the value xi I is equal to 13. So now it is correct. Now it is fine, right? So for this point I set xi equal to 6. For this point I set xi is equal to 13 and so on. For the other points maybe xi is equal to 0. Okay, so basically for a particular setting of w I have to put the values xi I to all the points to make sure that this constant is always satisfied. Now of course like for most of the points the xi i's are going to be 0 as usual, but there will be some points for the which this particular I mean this particular classifier is not going to classify correctly, and for such points I can compensate by adding a certain value of xi. So these xi i's are called slack variables. Why slack? Slack basically means what? Slack basically means loose, not strictly enforced. So for most of the points xi I is equal to 0. So that means to say this point does not exist. This is, and I am not even specifying for which points this xi will exist at the outset. It it all depends on which w we choose. For certain choices of w, some points will not be classifiable, correctly classifiable. So for those points, these xi will be an appropriate value will be given to these xi's to make sure that these constraints are satisfied. Okay, so that is why it is called slack variable. Its values are usually 0, but they are like they are called up when necessary. We can also call these as emergency variables. Emergency, like what is the emergency, or for what emergency purpose are these variables called up? The emergency purpose here is to satisfy this equation. Whenever we find that for a particular w and for a particular point, whenever I see that this equation is not being satisfied, then I adjust xi I such that it becomes satisfied. So you can say this is like some kind of a mathematical trickery. Now so basically what, so if a point is correctly classified, or for correctly classified points, what is the value of xi?
0.
0. Right, as I said already, the points which are going to be correctly classified, for them I do not need xi. The correctly classified with respect to what? With respect to the marginal classifiers. Now let us consider those points that is okay for points which are misclassified using the optimal classifier. For such points, as we saw, xi must take a value greater than 1, right? Because that is, this side is negative. So if xi is says something between 0 and 1 or something negative, obviously this will never happen. That right? So that means what? That means like these say if we consider these kinds of points, right? So like you can understand that for a point like this or for a point like this side will have to be greater than will have to be less than -1, will have to be like, as we saw in this case, -5, or in this case -12, etc. Now if if this side is like less than -1, then obviously xi will have to be greater than 1, otherwise this will never be satisfied. So we can say that for such points xi is greater than 1. Now finally, if we consider say a point like this, say this circle or this cross, okay, so what is the speciality of this circle? This circle, as you can understand, is still correctly classified using the optimal classifier, but it is misclassified using the marginal classifier, right? So, that is now the distance from here to here, as we have seen, is this 1 by L2 norm of W. So for those points whose distance from the optimal classifier is closer than that, right? For such points again, this is not going to be satisfied. That is, we will, for such points, yi W transpose X, this is greater than equal to 0. Why? Because they are correctly classified with respect to the optimal classifier, but it is not greater than 1. Why? Because it is misclassified with respect to the marginal classifier. So the points lying between the optimal classifier and marginal classifier. So let's go back to this diagram here. So see, there are two kinds of points here: the blue points and the red points. So if you can see if you look at this red point, so this is anyway misclassified by both the. So as you can understand, this is like, these two are the marginal classifiers. This black thick line, this is the optimal classifier, and the optimal classifiers classifies as follows: everything on this side are to be classified as red, everything on this side are to be classified as blue. Now if we consider this particular point, so clearly this is to be misclassified using like both the optimal classifier as well as the marginal classifier for the red classes. The marginal classifier for the red classes misclassifies this point, as it is all the reds are on this side, but this red has somehow escaped beyond it. And even the optimal classifier, that also everything on this side will be classified as blue, but this one is red. So for these kinds of points, the lag variable has to be greater than 1. Now if you consider this particular point, so this lies on the correct side of the of the optimal classifier. But if you consider this marginal classifier for the red class, you can see that this is misclassified, right? So for these kinds of points, like we do have W transpose X is greater than 0 because they are correctly classified with respect to the optimal one, but it's less than 1 because it is not correctly classified with respect to the marginal classifier, right? So about these points, we can say for those for points correctly classified by optimal but misclassified by marginal for such points we have xi lying in the range 0 to 1, right? So like it's like here in for such points this may take the value something like 0.5. So in that case xi will also have to take a value of 0.5. if it takes the value of 0.4, then xi will have to take a value of 0.6. whatever it is, the xi in for such cases, such points, it lies between 0 and 1. So correctly classified or non-problematic means xi is equal to 0. Now misclassified by optimal classifier means xi is greater than 1, and correctly classified by optimal mean but misclassified by marginal means it lies between 0 and 1. Okay, so this is something to remember. Now let us try to solve the problem, that is to say the optimization problem in the presence of these xi variables. Now let us rewrite the constraints as follows. So like LW and xi, so since we do not know the values of xi, these xi's are our unknown, we have to treat them as unknown variables. So the objective function for maximum margin remains such that what? Such that yi w transpose xi is greater than equal to 1 minus xi for all I, right? Now one more thing we need to keep in mind. So that is we have already discussed that for the correctly classified points xi is 0, and for like whenever xi takes some value, that basically means that that corresponding data point is misclassified, either with respect to the to only the marginal classifier or with respect to the optimal classifier also. That is to say, now like if we consider all the xi's, a higher value of xi suggests that more points are being misclassified. Okay, so that is not something we want. We do not want many points to be misclassified. See, these when I am talking about when I am talking about this constraint, it basically makes sure that like this constraint, the xi's are chosen in such a way that this constraint is satisfied for all the points. This does not prevent any particular point from being misclassified. That is to say, I can like whenever I find that a particular point is getting misclassified, I can just adjust the value of xi, just give it a suitable value of xi and correctly classify it. That is to say, suppose w is equal to 0, right? The 0 vector, as we had discussed yesterday also. So if we did not have the constraints here, if we had just this thing, minimize this quantity, then of course I would have put w equal to 0 vector. There cannot be any w which gives a lesser value of the objective than this. But the problem is that if I had used w equal to 0, then many of the points would have been misclassified. But now that I have introduced the xi variables, maybe I can still go back to the w equal to 0 formulation. And whenever I see that, so that if w is equal to 0, then what happens to this side? Obviously, this side will be equal to 0. That is, whatever for every point, this will be equal to 0. But that means what? That means I can now easily put xi is equal to say 1, and then this will be satisfied, right? So like I can simply so the answer to this problem, a trivial answer to this problem is w equal to 0 and xi is equal to 1 for all the data points, right? So that means what? That means all most of the data points may have been misclassified. That is, I have got this value of W, that just the zero vectors. It like the all the point or most of the points are misclassified, but like I have compensated any problem, or I have or I have solved any issues that might arise in the computations here by just setting xi is equal to 1. Okay, so clearly this is not what I want. Can anyone suggest how I can remove this problem? I mean, the xi I will have to have, but at the same time I do not want this kind of a solution also. So can you suggest what I may do? Any suggestion? The answer is that I basically want to avoid I basically want to minimize the number of mistakes. Okay, I do not I do not want the mistakes to happen. Now xi is somehow like it's indicative of mistakes. The more the mistakes happen, the more xi is going to be. So apart from trying to minimize this thing, I also try to minimize this thing. It is the sum of all the xi's. These also I try to minimize. Now, what is the logic of doing this? The logic of doing this is just trying to ensure that the xi there are we do not have large xi's. Now, of course, we are not trying to say that that number of non-zero xi's has to be minimized. What I am saying is that the sum of the xi's will have to be minimized. I mean, ideally, what do I want? Ideally, I want the number of misclassified samples to be minimized. That is, I would have ideally wanted to minimize such the number of such points for which xi is is positive. Okay. But that I am not able to do. I mean, because it is difficult to express that thing as a mathematical function. So I simply express. I mean, it's difficult to express this as a differentiable mathematical function. So I simply use the sum instead. So this I mean, I'm not saying that this is the ideal situation. Say, for example, consider two cases. Now this is in one case the xi values are as follows: 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. For all the 5 data points, the xi takes 1 values. In the other case, it's 0, 0, 0, 0, minus 8. Okay, sorry, 8. Sorry, not minus 8, 8. Okay, so now between these two cases, which do you think is better for us? This case or this case?
The
second one.
The second one. Why? Why is this better?
But because most of the points in that section are correctly classified.
Exactly. The xi in most of the cases, the xi's are equal to 0, which means that they are correctly classified. So we can say that the accuracy in this case is 4/5. In this case, all the xi's are negative, are positive, which means that all of them are misclassified. So this has a accuracy of 0. However, the sum in this case is 5, and the sum in this case is 8. Okay, but so choosing this sum of all the xi's as the trying to minimize the sum of all the xi's is probably not a great idea, because that does not prevent these kind of scenarios from arising. However, it's not that we have a lot of choice. That is to ensure this kind of thing is like we get, that is to prioritize this over this. What I should ideally do is we have to promote a sparse xi. That is to say, instead of just the sum of xi, I have to use something like the sparsity, some kind of a sparsity producing function I have to induce on xi. Say, for example, like we have already studied lasso regression, right? So in case of lasso regression, what did we want? we wanted W vector to be as sparse as possible. And how did we do lasso regression? By using the L1 norm, right? So ideally, like here, what we should have used is the L1 norm of the xi sorry, of the xi vector. So that all that is, we could have just taken all the xi's together as a single n-dimensional vector and tried to make it sparse by using the sparsity inducing L1 regularizer on it, right? So like this would have induced sparsity. That's what we should have done. The problem is that this L1, like as if you remember, for lasso regression, we had said that like we cannot directly solve it. We need numerical methods. So similarly, in this case also, we would not have been able to solve it so easily. That is the solution of it, the problem would have been difficult. So I make a compromise, and I, instead of going for the L1 norm of the size, I go for just the like just this thing, which is the summation of the size, right? Now now comes the magic. You can see that this is actually same as the L1 norm of xi. Why? Because the xi's are actually greater than equal to 0. That is to say, the L1 norm of a vector is what? The L1 norm of a vector is nothing but this thing, right? The sum of the magnitudes. But the xi's have been constructed in such a way that that they are anyway not going to be negative. They can be 0 or they can be some positive number. So taking the summation of the xi's is effectively the same as taking the L1 norm of the xi vector. And if L1 norm induces sparsity, then using this will also induce sparsity. Okay, so that is to, so this is almost a magic. By this magic, we escape the requirement of having to put the mod here. If we had put the mods here, then there would have been problems with differentiability and so on. But even without putting the mods, we are able to effectively do the same thing. So we are saved in this case. We will still, that means what? That means we will probably still get a sparse xi only. Now what do we do? Now once again, we as in the previous case, we like write down the this augmented objective function, including the w and the xi's which were already present, plus the Lagrangian multipliers. So the whole thing becomes like, for the lack of time, I am not no longer going step by step. So you can see that this is what the problems become. Oh, by the way, I forgot to write this one vital constant. All the xi's have to be greater than 1. Yeah, the thing which I just said, the xi's must be greater than equal to 0. So that also I have to include as a constant. So now basically I have so this is what my problem now looks like. This is my objective function. I have n for all the n data points. I have this constant. Additionally, for all the xi's, I have this constant. So I just put the whole thing in the standard form. Like you can just convince yourself that like if we write the whole thing in standard form using the Lagrangian multipliers, this is what we will get. So for this set of n equations, I mean n inequalities, I will get n Lagrangian multipliers which I will call as alpha I, and for these n inequalities I will get another set of Lagrangian multipliers which I will call as beta I. Okay. So this is the first set of Lagrange multipliers. This is the second set of Lagrange multipliers. So this is what, like, once you introduce all the Lagrange multipliers and write out the whole thing, this is what it looks like. I am not showing how to do it. Like, I leave it to you as an exercise. After that, what do we do? Once again, we do the same thing. We take derivatives of this whole thing with respect to w, with respect to the xi's, with respect to alpha, beta, everything. Okay, and then we again, so once again we get, for as far as w is concerned, we once again get the same equation which we had got last time. That is to say what? That is to say W is equal to summation alpha I yi xi. This expression for alpha W remains unchanged despite the induction of all the i's. But the problem will, the calculation of these alpha i's will change. Okay, so once again what they do is, once again they take the help of the quadratic programming, which we are not going to discuss here. And then finally, after solving the quadratic programming, we will get the alphas which will continue to be sparse. Also we will get all the i's. Okay, that is the so this equation, it has basically three variables, four variables: the w's, the i's, the alphas, and the betas. Everything else is constant. Now what do? I express w in terms of the alphas. Now and the rest of the variables, the alphas, betas, and i's, like they are like that is, I reformulate this whole equation in terms of only alphas, betas, and i's, and pass it on to the our, what we call it, the quadratic programming, and it gives me the values of alphas, betas, and i's. And it once again it turns out to be that the most of the alphas are sparse. That means what? That means those points which are correctly classified, for them alpha is equal to non-zero, and the alpha is for them alpha is equal to 0, and alpha is non-zero only for those points which either they are lying on the marginal classifier as earlier, or the points which are misclassified, right? So these are the sets of points which are going to, which are basically the alphas. I mean, not the alpha, they are the support vectors. So we can, in fact, we can see that there are three kinds of support vectors. One is of course lying on the marginal classifiers, which were already there in the previous formulation also. They are the original support vectors. Next are those points which are lying in between the marginal classifier and the optimal classifier, like this point. Right, they are correctly classified with respect to the optimal classifier, but wrongly classified with respect to the marginal classifier. So for them xi is between 0 and 1. And finally the ones which are actually misclassified even by the optimal classifier, for which xi is greater than 1. So for all these set of points, they are going to be the support vectors in this case, and for them the alpha is going to be positive, non-zero. So, this is the way, like this formulation is basically known as the soft margin SVM. Soft margin SVM formulation. Note that once I get the alphas, the formulation for W remains unchanged, and the classification and the in the test phase also the functioning remains changed. That is, suppose our new test point comes, whose feature is x test. Then what I have to do? What do I have to do? I simply have to calculate it as the following thing: y hat is equal to sine of what? Sine of W transpose X test. Correct. Now what is this W? W is this W. So now what can we do? So now let us write this, bring that equation in. So we can write, instead of W, we substitute the value of W, and what I get is as follows: 1 through n alpha I yi xi transpose X test. Okay. So the point to be noted here is that the alpha i's, these are of course the values which are coming from the QP, and for the non-support vectors, the alpha i's are of course going to be 0. But for the support vectors for which alpha I is non-zero, that means basically what I am doing, the interesting thing to be noted here is this part. That is, what I am doing is that I am considering xi transpose X test. So what does this mean? This means the dot product of the test vector with the ith data point. So what I'm so basically when I am trying to classify this X test, what I am effectively doing is I am I mean I do not like if I know the numerical value of W as a vector, I do not have to actually do this, but what I am effectively doing is as follows. I am taking the test point to all of the n training points. I am taking the calculating their dot product, multiplying that dot product with the class level yi as well as the corresponding alpha I, and adding them up. So in a sense, we are comparing this test vector to all the training points, just like we do in case of a nearest neighbor. But the thing is that we are actually solved, or we are actually saved from having to do it for all the data points because of what? Because of the alphas. We know that alphas are 0 for most of the training points. Its alpha is non-zero only for the support vectors. Now the ones which are either lying on the marginal classifiers or which have been misclassified. I have to compare our X test only with them. I have to compare means I have to take their dot product, multiply with this yi as well as the corresponding alpha I, and then add them up and take the sign. So this is the way we do. So the interesting thing to be noted, one more interesting thing to be noted here is that the xi I is not at all present. So we did all the calculations etc. using the xi i's and so on, but when it comes to the actual classification, then xi I does not play any role. So this formulation we called as the soft margin SVM using the xi i's. This is to basically like this is suitable for almost linearly separable data sets. For linearly separable data sets, we have normal SVMs. For almost linearly separable data sets, we have soft margin SVM. Now we are almost at the end of the time. Let me quickly introduce one more concept, that is the what happens if it is a non-linearly separable data set. Say in this case, say what is happening here, if you see the separate, like you can understand that there are two sets of points which are organized as in a concentric circle. So this data set suggests that here if we can consider a circle whose radius is somewhere whose origin is somewhere here and whose radius is something like this, right, then it will, that such a circle will lie exactly between these two sets of points so that they will be separated, correct? So so let us say that the center in this case is x0 and that radius, the requisite radius here is r. Sorry, I mean the square of the reduced radius is r. Okay, so this is the this then is the equation for the corresponding circle or sphere, whatever, which separates the I mean a quadratic structure which separates these two classes. Okay, so if you can write it out, this is what you will get. So we can say that, so since this is the separating structure is quadratic or non-linear, so we call this as a non-linear separable data set. The magic is that this we can as well look upon this thing as a as a case of linear separation in a different feature space. So suppose I define a transformation of the data in the following way. So X is my feature vector. It's a d-dimensional feature vector lying in the normal feature space. Now suppose I, instead of considering the feature vectors X, suppose I consider a different kind of feature vector. I mean a transformed value of that feature vector as follows. So it's again, it continues to remain a vector. The first element of the vector is X transpose X, which is of course a scalar. Thus after that, the whole vector X is once again put in but multiplied with this factor of -2, and finally we add a 1 to it. Okay, so as you can understand, if X is d-dimensional, the dimension of this new vector is going to be d plus 2. This first one, this is a scalar, it has dimension 1. The last one, that also is a scalar, its dimension is 1. And finally in between there is this -2x, which is of course just the d-dimensional vector itself multiplied by a factor of -2. So total I have 1 plus d plus 1 equal to d plus 2 dimensions. Correct? So, I mean, sorry, that is the length of this vector is d plus 2. Now also define as w this particular vector. So you can again understand that this is again going to be d plus like d plus 2 dimensional vector. The first one is 1, which is of course a constant, a scalar. Next is x naught. What is x naught? X naught is the origin, which is basically a point in the feature space. So x naught also has dimension d. And if you consider this one, so this is clearly a scalar from which I subtract minus r, which is also a scalar. So this is again like one dimensional. So total what do I have? 1 plus d plus 1 equal to d plus 2. So w d plus 2, phi x is also d plus 2. So I can take dot product. Now suppose instead of like earlier in the normal linear classifier, I say that I take by my classification is as follows: y is equal to sine of w transpose x. Right? Now what I am claiming now, I am claiming that I will not do the classification on x. Instead, every feature vector I will transform using this function called phi, and I will so for x, after transformation I will get phi x, and then I will try to classify the phi x itself, not x. So this is what my linear classifier will look like. Correct? Now, so like in the space of phi x, this is the linear classifier only. Now, but the way w has been defined and phi has been defined, you can just convince yourself that writing this is the same as writing this. You can, like, I leave it for an exercise for you as an exercise to show that this thing and this thing are the same. They are equal, they are identical. But while this is a quadratic function in x, this is a linear function in phi x. That means what? That means these, like if you look at this particular data set or this particular feature space, here the data was non-linearly separable. They had to be separated by a quadratic structure like a circle. But when the same data I transform to this space, then I can actually linearly separate them using a hyperplane only, like this. Okay, so that that's again some kind of a magic. So now if we say that, like, now if I know what kind of a so given a non-linearly separable data, if I know what kind of this transformation to take, then I can actually transform the non-linearly separable data into linearly separable data, and then apply the SVM algorithm and get an ideal value of w. Right? That's what we can do. Of course, the problem is that in this case I got phi x and I got w by inspection. That is, I could like, again, this is two-dimensional. There are relatively less number of data points. The separating nonlinear structure is very clear. I can understand that it is a circle with center at x naught and radius r. I can see all those things, so I can easily come up with what is phi x and what is w. Again, but in general, in normal conditions, you will neither be able to understand what is phi x, nor you will understand what is w, nor will you understand what the non-linear classifier should be in this case. Okay, so in such situations, we so the idea holds, but the phi x or the w we will not be able to define. So then what we do is we do a strange trick known as kernel trick. Before coming to what that trick is, the important thing to note here is that when we are solving the SVM problem, this is like so note, when we are solving the SVM problem, so we initially had w, then what did we do? We expressed w as a function of alpha I yi x, as basically we express w in this way, right? Correct? And then what did we do? We substituted this value of w into the optimization problem in such a way that w got eliminated from it. And so this, after elimination of W, this is what the standard SVM problem looks like. I mean, not the soft SVM problem, but the standard SVM problem. This is what it looks like. Now what? But and now if instead of xi, if I am going for phi xi, then this is what it will be. Nothing complicated here. So we already know that there are dot products like this. So instead of taking the dot product between xi and xi and xj, I just take the dot products between phi xi and phi xj. Okay, this is the whole way the whole thing works. Similarly, in the prediction also. So in the like in the normal SVM, a lot in the linear cases so far, this is the way we are making the prediction. We already said this a few minutes back, right? So basically what we do is nothing but we take the test feature vector, we take its dot product with all the support vectors, multiply them with these factors, add them up, and then take the sign. Right? So basically the value of the feature vectors are important only for this kind of a dot product. So basically that means I do not need xi or xj. I do not need any of the feature vectors themselves, nor do I need their phi values. I only need their dot product between pairs of them. So whether I am taking xi, that is xi dot xij, or like in this case I was taking xi dot xij, in this, sorry, xj, in this case I am taking phi xi transpose or phi xi dot phi xj. Okay. So that's all there is. Of course, phi, it's another matter that I do not know phi, but this is like whenever x in the, for all practical purposes, whenever xi appears or whenever the feature vector x appears, it always appears in the form of a dot product like this, the dot product between two feature vectors. Now that makes our task a bit easier. That allows us to apply what we call as the kernel trick. Now what is a kernel trick? Kernel trick is basically is a kernel function is such a function which basically defines which takes as input any two vectors and returns as output the dot product between some transformed form of those vectors. That is, even if I do not know what is phi I, like what this function phi is, I may actually be able to come up with a function such that phi of xi transpose times phi, I mean phi of xi transpose phi xj is equal to some kernel function defined over xi and xj. Okay. So that is called the kernel trick. The kernel trick is that you do not have to define phi. Why do I not want to define? Okay, first of all, why do I need this phi? Because this phi is transforming the non-linearly separable data into a new space where the data is linearly separable, and hence I can do the separate classification using the SVM. That's what I am trying to do here also. That's why I need phis. But I cannot get phis. Why? Because the data set is large and high dimensional. It is not possible for me to understand why what phi can be. I do not know how to come up with a suitable function phi. If it is two dimensional, then yes. If it is high dimensional, then probably not. Now what is kernel trick? Kernel trick is telling I do not need to define phi. You just define k, or you just choose a k. I will define phi for you. So like k of xi comma xj, this kind of a function, so that this function can be it can be some easily computable function, some function of the two vectors xi and xj, but they are the function will be such that there exists some transformation phi for which k of xi xj is equal to phi of xi transpose phi of xj. It's a bit counterintuitive, but this is the way it works. Now, does it mean that now what function or what kind of function is this k? Okay, so like as you can understand, this is a dot product between two vectors. So obviously this will have, this is a scalar function. So whatever this kernel function does, it has to take in two vectors as input and return a scalar. Now, not all functions can be used as say the kernel function. So like for example, I take any two any random function for xi. Say suppose I have a vector xi and I have another vector xj, and I say that I will just say add these two and say take the L2 norm of them. Okay, so let us say this thing. Now this is not to suggest that this is this will give me some that is there exists some phi such that this can be expressed as phi x1 transpose phi xj. No, this is not the case. This I cannot do. This is wrong. There are only certain functions, only a small class of functions which can act as a kernel function. Now, what are those functions? Those are such functions which satisfy what is known as Mercer's condition. So there is a so this is what is known as the Mercer's condition. You do not have to understand this condition in great detail. Basically what it is telling you is that there are some functions which satisfy this Mercer condition, and it is only for those functions that such a phi actually exists. That is to say that whenever you have xi and xj, and I calculate k of xi xj, what I get is basically phi of xi times phi of xj. Now, where does phi come from? I mean, it does not come. I never get to know what is phi. I only know that there is such a phi for which this kind of a thing happens. Okay? So this is the kernel function. And so there are a few known functions which are already known to scientists to be satisfying this Mercer's condition. So these are basically the standard kernel functions. Say for example, the linear kernel, where k of that is, if you consider any two vectors x and y, then the so we have to define their let's say just their dot product between them. This is called the linear kernel. Right, so in this case you can easily understand phi x is nothing but x itself. That is this k of xy is equal to x transpose y. So that and the claim is that this is also equal to phi x transpose phi I. So we can probably conclude that phi of x is equal to x itself. So this is a very trivial case. But there can be more complicated kernels also, say the polynomial kernel, which is defined in the following way. So so basically I do not know what is the phi in this case. Maybe some of you can try to find out. So here basically there exists such a phi for such that this thing, this expression is equal to phi of x transpose phi of y. Same thing about this RBF kernel also. So that is this gamma is a parameter. So you have you just calculate the L2 norm of the difference between x and y, which you can also call as the squared Euclidean distance between the two vectors, and then take multiply this by a factor of minus gamma and take its exponential. That is the that is how you define this kernel function between x and y, and scientists have already found out that this is actually there does exist such a transformation phi for which k of xy is this k of xy is equal to phi x transpose phi I. So these are some of the standard kernel functions. So what do you do in this case? In this case, basically you have to train your kernel. So this kind of SVM is known as a kernelized SVM. So whenever you are trying to make any prediction, you will have to basically predict sorry, you will first of all you will have to specify what kind of kernel function you are interested in. Is it the polynomial kernel or the linear kernel or the this RBF kernel or some other kernel? That you have to first of all just specify. In fact, you can define your own kernel your own kernel function also, as long as it satisfies the Mercer's condition. Now once you have done that, the rest of it is just as it follows. You just do the you just feed that to the QP solver, and all the alphas they come out for you, and then when you want to do the this testing, you can do the testing in just in this way. That is, instead of using this formula of taking dot products of X test with all the training points, you just have to like calculate the kernel function between the test point and each of the training points. Okay, I mean each of the support vectors. That's all there is. So this basically is known as the kernelized SVM. So just to summarize, so when whenever we come across a linearly separable data set, we want to separate. If we want to separate the two classes using any separating hyperplane or any linear classifier, we go for perceptron algorithm. If I am interested in finding the best or the most optimal linear classifier, we have to go for this max margin classifier, which is also called the hard margin SVM. Now, if the data is almost linearly separable, then you bring in all the Zeiss and do what is the soft margin SVM. And finally, when the data is non-linearly separable, then what do? We convert the data to linearly separable form and then use a linear classifier. And what is that? That is the kernelized SVM. The kernel takes care of this conversion to the or transformation to the linearly separable form, which does not happen in your form. That is, even if you define kernel function, you may not be able to define phi, so you will not be able to see that you have transformed the data to a linearly separable space, but the thing will continue to work nevertheless. And once you have like defined the kernel, then you will have to use the SVM algorithm as usual, and finally you will get the linear classifier, which is the kernelized SVM. Okay, and finally the other option is, instead of doing the, like, if you are unable to do this, that is, if you are unable to find such a suitable kernel for which your data will be converted to linearly separable form, then we will have to go for a non-linear classifier only. A linear classifier then will no longer work. You have to go for a non-linear classifier. And what is a non-linear classifier? A very good example of a non-linear classifier is neural network, and that is what you are going to study from next Monday, and you will be taught by Professor Ziaul Hochberg. Okay, so with that I end this lecture, and from now I hand over to the teaching assistants to explain the content today. Okay, thank you.